It started as a joke, or that's what I told myself because jokes feel harmless and harmless things don't blow up your life. A girl at work, Tasha, leaned over her salad and said, "There's this app where people pay you just to cuddle. No sex, no kissing, just holding. $200 for watching a movie and being the big spoon. I did it twice last month and paid my car note." She laughed like it was a prank the universe forgot to take down. I laughed too, and then I went home, lay in bed next to my boyfriend, Matt, and stared at the ceiling while he snored soft and steady. We were behind on bills. Nothing dramatic, just that nagging kind of behind that makes you think twice about ordering fries or replacing a shaky charger. I opened the App Store and typed the name she gave me. I told myself I was only curious. I told myself I would just look. The sign-up asked for a photo, a short bio, and boundaries. I picked the most boring headshot I had and wrote something like strictly platonic, safe space, no touching under clothing. It felt almost responsible, like I was checking the child lock before pulling out of the driveway. I set my rates low because I didn't think anyone would book me. By morning I had 3 messages. By lunch I had 5. By the end of the week I had a booking for Friday night with a man named Derek who worked in IT support and liked quiet movies, weighted blankets, and no talking after 9 p.m. I told Matt I had to cover a late shift for a coworker. He kissed my forehead and said, "You're sweet for helping," then offered to pack me leftovers. I stood there, chewing shame like gristle, and said I'd grab something on the way. Derek lived in a clean, too quiet apartment with soft lamps and a sofa that swallowed you whole. He was awkward and kind. We sat a foot apart and watched a nature documentary. 30 minutes in he asked, "Is it okay if I put my arm around you?" My mouth said, "Sure," before my brain finished deciding. He put his arm around me like he was handling glass. When the 2 hours were up, he pressed folded bills into my hand and said, "Thank you." I drove home with the window cracked in October air, the cash warm in my pocket like a secret. I told myself I had done a silly, harmless thing that would help with groceries, help with gas, help with the way Matt rubbed his temples when the internet bill hit. I did it again the next week with a widower who missed being held while he fell asleep. He talked about his wife for 10 minutes, then turned the TV to a cooking show and cried without sound. I patted his shoulder like I was soothing a child. When he snored, I slid out from under his arm, left the money on his side table, and stood in the dark entryway staring at my shoes, trying to remember at what point kindness turned into something I could never explain. I told myself it wasn't cheating because there was no sex, because I had rules, because I kept my clothes on and left before midnight. I told myself it wasn't betrayal because I was doing it for us. I said that line out loud in the bathroom mirror one afternoon. For us. And felt the ridiculousness of it and said it again anyway until it sounded less like a lie and more like a plan. When Matt asked why I suddenly loved working late, I said the holiday season was busy. When he asked why my hoodie smelled like a stranger's laundry detergent, I said the bus seat had a weird smell. Lies stacked up like dishes, small, annoying, easy to ignore until one slips and they all clang loud enough to make the dog bark. There were moments I nearly told him. Like the night he came home with a new cutting board because he knew I'd been eyeing one, and he said, "I like making things easier for you when I can." I felt that sentence like a hand around my throat because I was doing the opposite. I was making everything harder and I couldn't stop. The money wasn't even the main pull anymore. It was the rush of feeling like I had a thing that was only mine, a door I could close and be whoever I wanted for 2 hours. I could be soothing. I could be interesting. I could be the girl who always knew where the blanket was. It made me feel powerful in this strange, sugar highway that crashes the second you're back in the hallway fumbling for your keys. The night it broke started normal. Matt made tacos and asked about my shift. I said I might be late. He said he'd keep a plate warm. I grabbed my tote and a charger and lied again, easy as breathing. Derek had booked me for a second time and asked if we could do another documentary and that arm thing. It should have felt creepy, it felt like routine. When I got home, Matt was sitting on the couch with the TV paused. He had my phone in his hand and that expression I had only seen once before. When his dad called to say his mom was in the hospital. Cold. Focused. Like his brain had already left to go deal with whatever this was and his body was just staying polite. He held up the screen. It was my Venmo feed. Derek had sent me money with a memo that said, "Thanks for last night. See you Friday." My chest went tight and numb at the same time. I reached for words and came up with excuses. "It's work," I said. "Side work. It's just cuddling." "It's not what you think." I said it 4 different ways and watched each one hit him like a small stone. He didn't throw the phone. He didn't yell. He just asked, "You let men pay you to touch you and you hid it from me. Tell me how that isn't cheating." I tried to sell the idea like a pitch. "It's strictly platonic. There are rules. It's better than actually cheating. I did it to help with money." Even while I was saying it, I knew the money part was a fig leaf. He stared at me for a long, quiet minute that felt like hours. Then he said, "You sold what I thought was ours. You sold something I thought belonged to the two of us and then climbed in bed and let me hold what strangers had just rented." He stood, walked to the bedroom, pulled a duffel from the closet, and started folding clothes with a calm that terrified me. I begged. I cried. I promised to delete the app, to give the money away, to tell my parents, to do anything. He zipped the duffel and said the one sentence that gutted me, "I don't want to be with someone who needs a loophole to justify betraying me." He left that night. I lay on the floor and watched the ceiling fan turn like time refusing to stop. The next morning I woke up thinking it had been a nightmare, and then I saw the space on his side of the dresser where his cologne used to be. My phone had 8 messages from my mother and none from him. By noon he had blocked me on everything, texts, calls, email, even Spotify. That last one stung in a dumb way. We used to share playlists. I refreshed our chat so many times my thumb hurt. By the end of the week my parents knew because Matt returned a casserole dish to my mom and she asked where I was. He said, "We broke up," and when she asked why, he looked at the floor and said, "Ask her." She called and I considered lying again and then heard my own voice say, "I took money to cuddle men and I didn't tell him," and my mom made a sound I had never heard from her. The kind of sound you make when you drop a box you thought was empty and the sound tells you it was full. My dad didn't get on the phone. He sent a text later that said, "We raised you better than this," and then nothing for 3 weeks. When he finally called, he talked about the weather and the lawnmower and then said he hoped I would find better standards. I almost laughed at the phrase because it sounded like a polite sign in a museum. Please find better standards. Friends split like a cell. Tasha, who told me about the app in the first place, said I had been careless with the memos and should have used emojis. She meant well, I guess, but the way she focused on the logistics made me feel colder. 2 of my closest friends said they loved me but couldn't defend what I did. A guy friend I'd always thought of as a brother said, gently, "You crossed a line, and the worst part is you knew there was a line because you hid it." The quiet afterward felt like standing at the back of a church after the service ended, holding a program and pretending you belonged there. I kept the apartment because the lease was in my name. Matt wrote 3 sentences about returning his keys and asked if I could leave his mail with the building manager. I wrote back at least 10 drafts of an email I never sent, ones that started with "I made a mistake" and ended with "please." He didn't want a speech. He wanted a version of me that I didn't have. I deleted the app because keeping it felt like sitting with open scissors. I refunded 2 future bookings and got a message from a client who said, "No worries, you're great at this." It made me nauseous. I blocked him, then unblocked him, then blocked him again because I couldn't figure out what I wanted more, to be chased or to disappear. Money wasn't the problem. That almost made it worse. I had savings, and after the cuddling weeks, a cushion I'd never had before. But I had no one to call when the light over the stove flickered. No one to send a dumb meme to at 11 p.m. No one to argue about laundry with. I became careful with my evenings the way you become careful with a cut. Hands up, don't bump it, don't make it bleed. I went to the gym at odd hours so I wouldn't have to see the couples who stretched together. I bought groceries in small amounts so I wouldn't have to carry heavy bags up the stairs alone. My life shrank to fit what I had earned. I saw Matt out once, 6 weeks after he left. He was at a farmer's market, laughing at something a woman said. She had a braid and a kind face and the kind of easy posture of someone who never had to defend the word loyalty in a fight. I ducked behind a stack of strawberries like an idiot, then straightened up because hiding made me feel smaller. He didn't see me. I watched him hand the woman a peach and a napkin and thought, you don't get to have this thought, but I had it anyway, she doesn't know what you like. Then I remembered I had traded the right to know for a stack of 20s and a clean lie. There were little punches I didn't expect. The landlord upgraded the building's intercom system and sent instructions to everyone. The email came from Matt's address because he had always handled tech stuff for our floor. I stared at his name like it was a word in another language I used to speak. One morning I found his old blue hoodie in the bottom of the laundry basket, washed and clean and smelling like our detergent, and sat on the floor with it in my lap until my coffee went cold. I thought about mailing it to him and then pictured it arriving at his new place and the new girl opening it, and I put it back in the basket and told myself I'd decide later. I tried therapy because there was nowhere else for the words to go. The therapist asked why I didn't tell Matt before I started. I said, because he would have said no. She asked why I needed strangers to hold me. I said, because I wanted to feel chosen without anyone knowing the parts of me that make me hard to choose. She asked if I understood why Matt saw it as cheating. I said, yes, and it surprised me that I meant it. I understood better than anyone. I had always known it lived in the same neighborhood as cheating. I just convinced myself I had a visitor's pass. One afternoon in early spring, I was leaving my building when Derek, the first client, was waiting on the sidewalk. He smiled like we were old friends and lifted a hand. Hey, he said. You never answered my last message. I thought maybe we could do a movie again. I brought the cash. He held up an envelope and for a split second the desperate, stupid part of me reached for it. Then something steadier grabbed my wrist from the inside and said, no. I told him I wasn't doing it anymore. He looked hurt and then annoyed and said, it's not like we did anything wrong. I said, it was wrong for me, and walked back inside with my heart banging like I had run a mile. I blocked his number. I sat on my couch and shook until it passed. The worst conversation was with my mother, the one where the anger burned off and what was left was raw. She came over with soup like I was sick and put it on the stove and said, I'm trying to understand what you thought would happen. I said I thought I could hold 2 lives at once. She said, sweetheart, you can barely carry one. It wasn't an insult. It was a truth that tasted like medicine. I told her I missed Matt. She nodded and said, sometimes the thing you miss is the version of yourself you were with them. I wanted to fight that. I couldn't. With him, I had been the girl who puts back the nicer blanket so we can afford date night. Without him, I had been a girl who thought loopholes were tools and trust was a suggestion. I tried to reach out to him once more because I'm not noble and because hope is a muscle that refuses to atrophy until you cut it yourself. I wrote a letter by hand because emails felt cheap. I told him everything. How the first booking happened, how the lies felt like sugar and then like sand, how I understood it was betrayal even without sex, how I was sorry not in the lazy way but in the way that changes the shape of your days. I didn't ask him to come back. I asked him to be happy. I mailed it with a stamp that had a cartoon heart on it and immediately wished I had picked a flag. He didn't reply. 2 months later I saw that he had a new account on social media and he had posted a photo of a hiking trail with the caption Good Company. His face wasn't in it, but I knew it was him in the corner from the shoes. I closed the app and told myself to stop looking for proof he was okay. He was okay. That was the point. My friends slowly thawed. 2 came back. 1 never did. I learned how to sit through the urge to confess to strangers. I learned that shame burns hot and then settles into a weight you can carry if you stop shifting it around like you might find a lighter side. I returned the cutting board to Matt through the building manager because I couldn't stand the thought of it in my kitchen. I gave the extra blanket to a shelter. I changed my Venmo privacy to private because it made me laugh darkly, and then I turned off the app altogether. People ask sometimes why women do things like this. They mean, why did you need attention from men you didn't know when you had someone who loved you? I could give you an essay full of half-smart answers about validation and control and the sick little thrill of being wanted without being known, but the simpler truth is that I wanted to feel special without earning it. I wanted the shine without the work. Matt did the work. He was the kind of man who keeps the oil changed and the promises smaller than the ones he can keep because he thinks keeping promises is holy. He deserved what I pretended I was giving him. He deserved someone who believes that intimacy isn't a coupon you can clip and hand out to anyone with cash. Now my days are quiet. I get up, make coffee, water a plant I'm somehow keeping alive, and go to work where I do my tasks and keep my head down and try not to make my coworkers part of any story that isn't theirs. On Sundays I walk to the park and read a book on a bench and remind myself that peace isn't the same as boredom. Sometimes I see couples on blankets laughing at something on a phone and I feel that sharp, unkind envy and then I let it pass like a bee. I let it buzz and go. On the fridge there's a magnet shaped like a peach from the farmer's market Matt used to like. It holds up nothing. I leave it there anyway, like a small flag on a piece of ground I am trying to make honest. If you're waiting for a twist where he comes back, there isn't one. He won. I don't mean he won me. I mean he kept his boundaries, protected his heart, and walked away from a bad deal with his dignity intact. That's winning in adult life. Knowing when the cost is too high and paying it once instead of every day. I am the one who lost, not because I'm alone, but because I traded something priceless for something I can't even hold. Money spends fast. Trust doesn't. You don't realize that until all you have left is numbers in an account and a bed that stays cold unless you fill it with someone who doesn't know you. I don't want that. Not anymore. I still mess up. I still reach for the easy version of the truth when a hard one would do me better. But when I catch myself, I stop. I say the thing I don't want to say and let it land. I call my mom back. I write a note I won't mail. I forgive myself for 5 minutes and then try again tomorrow. It isn't a pretty ending, but it's an honest one, and I think maybe that's the only kind that doesn't fall apart when you look at it too long. If I ever love somebody again, I want to be able to say, this is mine, this is yours, this is ours, and mean it without a price tag attached. Until then, I make tacos on Tuesdays and eat them at the counter and don't pretend it's enough, but I also don't pretend it's nothing. It's a life I can stand inside without lying to breathe. And that's worth more than any side hustle I'll ever find.